Is it rolling, Bob? YouTube, YTPC. Beautiful Sunday evening. Trying to sneak in a pipe after dinner, after a long day of bike riding and yard work. Verge Engine Overdrive. My third bowl of this. I'm liking it. I want to show you this pipe. It's another eBay pipe. Wasn't even in a batch of a state lot. It's just I bought it individually. Still cheap, about 10 bucks. If you can see the rustification on there, it looks like a kind of like a mini custom built. That's why I bought it, because of the rustification. I thought it was kind of cool. But it's a tiny pipe. It smokes really well. I can keep it lit. It's my old nail. And I had a close call with this pipe. I don't just buy a pipe and smoke it. I've got to play with it. I'm always looking for pipes that need a little bit of love. This pipe the bowl was in pretty good shape, so I thought. But the stem was pretty rough. It had some pretty deep tooth marks. So I saw a YouTube video, a couple of them actually, where you can use heat to remove tooth marks from a vulcanite stem. So I got out the heat gun, aimed it at the stem. I'm waiting. Not too much is happening. So I figured if a little bit of heat is good, high setting must be better, right? So sure enough, when I put it on high, it just distorted the whole stem, pretty much beyond repair. And I was not a happy camper, because I was looking forward to using this pipe. So that was right around the time I was getting geared up to not make stems, but fit molded stems. Vermont Freehand. Really great guy up there. So I bought a stem and several others, and this tenon turning tool and all that. And I made this stem, which I think I'm pretty happy with. Again, with the vinyl tubing on the bit. So I was all psyched. I wanted to smoke my pipe with its new stem, and then I noticed when I was smoking it, I was getting moisture and smoke actually out of the shank here. And I started looking at it, and sure enough, there's cracks. I don't know if they're defects in the briar or if something happened to it, but the pipe was leaking. I said, oh boy. But then I remembered, I think it was Peddling Piper used super glue to seal up a similar crack in one of his pipes. So I tried that, and lo and behold, it worked perfectly. Put the super glue on there and rebuffed the pipe, and looks pretty good. You know, unless you know it's there, you wouldn't really go noticing right away that there's a crack. And it certainly doesn't leak. So I like this little pipe. It's kind of the kind of pipe I would take out in the woods or something. It's easy to carry, obviously. It's tiny. But it holds a good amount of tobacco. It smokes well. I like it. Just the other day, last night actually, late at night, I got a message from a high school friend of mine. We're still in touch through Facebook and whatnot, but we live a few hundred miles apart now. But when we were in high school, he was 3 houses down, and we would walk to work, walk to school every day, through the snow, uphill both ways, rain or shine. And we were good friends at the time. We always goofed around and built models and other kinds of gadgets. I learned a lot from him. He was a very clever guy. He went on to become a very talented engineer. But the thing was, we had to go to high school early. This was on Long Island in New York, and I'm right in the heart of the baby boom. So there wasn't enough room in our high school for all the kids. So the high school kids, as we were at that time, would go in the morning, and then junior high school kids would go in the afternoon. Same building, same classrooms, but it had split sessions. But what that meant was we had to be in high school in homeroom at, I think it was 7:10 a.m. and we were out by noon, or a little shortly after noon, which was great. But getting up at 7 to be in school, in the building at 7:10 was tough for teenagers. Especially tough for my friend. But I remember the reason I'm telling you this story is last night my friend sent me probably a YouTube video of Iron Butterfly. Now those of you of a certain age will probably remember them. I think they had one major hit. Pipes, this tobacco's a little wet. Inagata da Vida, psychedelic rock, and it came out in 1968, right when we were in high school. And I certainly wasn't into psychedelics, but this song just blew me away. I played it all the time, and that's why my friend sent me the video. It was a 2012 final concert of the original members of Iron Butterfly. He said it made him think of me. So I started thinking back on those days, and what I did was I had a record player. You know, back in the days it was 33 RPM LPs. Had a record player. And I took an alarm clock, tore it down, and from a clock radio, and I hooked the guts of the clock radio up to my record player, so that at 6 a.m. or whatever time I had to get up, I'd be awaken to the gentle sounds of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. Now that I think about it, one time I made a strobe light. I took made a plywood box with a floodlight in it and a motor from a record player or something with a cardboard disc that had a hole cut out in it, and that disc would spin, and as it went by the hole in the plywood box, it would create a strobe effect. So one morning I'm sleeping, got the clock set up, got the strobe light set up, the record player set up, and at 6 a.m. record player starts, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida starts blasting through my speakers, and the strobe light starts going. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. But my mother, on the other hand, who was still sleeping, came running in. What the? Of course, she wouldn't say what I would say today, but she said, "What is going on?" And she started yelling, screaming at me. So I guess that was probably the last time I did that. And I was thinking about that, how back in those days, you know, we had solid state electronics coming on, radios and things like that. But there was still a lot of analog stuff around, you know. Guts of clock radios or any kind of radio had tubes in it. The clocks were electromechanical. They weren't digital the way everything is today. Very analog. So we could tinker with things like that. I learned a lot of stuff that way. Didn't do too many stupid things, but or dangerous things, but a few. But we're still here to tell about it. But the things I learned back in those days, and combined with my nature, I guess, is anytime I get involved in any kind of hobby, the first thing I do is think about how to do it, how to make things, how to do things. I remember back in the day, thank goodness, I kicked the addiction to golf. But of course, the very first thing I had to do was make my own golf clubs. You know, buy the parts and the epoxy, and learn how to put on the grips and all that stuff. I sucked at the game, but I had fun building golf clubs. And bicycles. I love bicycles. We rode 30 miles this morning. But of course, most of my bikes are bikes that I've put together from old bikes and parts and things like that. The bike I rode this morning was, I think, a 1992 Bridgestone RB2 that I bought the frame and I put all the parts on it. My training bike. But anyway, I tell you these stories because I just wanted to talk about how, for me, pipe smoking is, of course, the tobacco and the smoking itself, but just as much, it's all about getting pipes and tinkering with them, cleaning them up, putting new parts on if they need it, and enjoying a smoke in a pipe that I've helped restore and rescue. And with that, I will say good evening and goodbye for now, and relight this. Be well.